Alright gamers, well, let's get bloodied up here and take a look at my most anticipated video game of 2019, Mortal Kombat 11. Yeah. How well does it hold up compared to the predecessors Mortal Kombat 2011 and Mortal Kombat X that came out in 2015? Does it take the necessary step forward, or is it a step backward? A step backward, unfortunately. But let's take a look at it in much more detail, shall we? Available on the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, PC even, and also available on Nintendo Switch. Yes. I've been hearing a lot of negative talk about the Nintendo Switch version even before it came out. A lot of fans were saying that Nintendo was going to wimp out with this game. And I was actually a little surprised with this version, as well as anybody else could have been. Some fans like it, some fans hate it. It's understandable. Nintendo's consoles are not as graphically enhanced or detailed as PlayStation or Xbox's versions are. And this console version, it's not as terrible as I thought it would have been. Yeah, I took a gamble, I know. And, well, I would have went for the PS4 version if this one was really that terrible, but honestly, I was, as I said, a bit surprised with this one. So let's take a look at it detail-wise, shall we? Taking place after Mortal Kombat X, Shinnok, as you know, in Mortal Kombat X is the last boss in the classic tower mode. He's defeated, and, well, he does return for a brief period in the prologue part of the story mode. Yes, you get that returning in this game. But yes, he returns, gets decapitated, and in comes his mother, also known as Kronika, the Keeper of Time, who just happens to replace him as the last boss in the classic tower mode. But let's not jump the gun here. Most of the familiar gameplay modes and mechanics are back. Most of the classic characters are in there. Scorpion, Sub-Zero, Liu Kang, Jax, Kung Lao, Noob Saibot, Raiden, Cabal, Baraka, Kano, Sonya Blade, Katana, Jade, Mileena. Wait, you have Katana and Jade but no Mileena? Seriously? Okay. Find that a bit odd. But anyway, yes, you get the big shot movie star himself, Johnny Cage, as well as returning characters from Mortal Kombat X, his daughter Cassie Cage, and some of the weird characters that you probably remember, like Devora, Aaron Black, Jacqueline Briggs, and Kotal Khan. And now the new characters, which you have a few of them, like G-Ruz, the servant of the last boss in this game, who uses the power of sand to create objects. Okay, that's kind of cool. Alongside him, you also have Cetrion. I don't know if I pronounced that 100% right. Yeah, these are some weird names and characters, I will say. She almost looks like a Mortal Kombat version of Poison Ivy, almost. You know, plants all over, and she's all about nature and plants, pretty much. But she's a pretty good fighter. As well as Collector, another four-armed character. Yeah, Mortal Kombat's got quite a thing for four-armed characters, I will say, don't you think? So, yeah, it doesn't seem like a huge roster or much of an upgrade compared to the previous two games in the series. But how does the gameplay hold up? Well, as I said, you got the basic classic tower mode. Nothing out of the ordinary there. The last boss is, as I said, the Keeper of Time, Kronika, and as you'd expect, she's pretty cheap as hell. Want to talk cheap? Well, here you go. You fight her, and, well, she does all these crazy moves, and then she freaking wusses out and calls for backup from another fighter. You could beat them easily, but come on, that's taking cheap to a whole new level right there. Thankfully, you only have to beat her in one round. If she beats you in one round, you gotta start over. As you'd expect, if you manage to beat her, you get the ending, depending on which character you chose. Nothing out of the ordinary there. And neither are the fighting mechanics as well. You can pause the game, of course, just like the previous installments, and to look up all the fighting moves and fatalities as well. They all work pretty good, the control's great, and you got all the basic moves you expect out of each character that you're familiar with. Like the special moves, throwing moves, and returning from Mortal Kombat X is the interaction with background effects, which you can either jump off of, or used against your opponent, like throwing stuff at them, or even taking a weapon and that's just laying around and use it against your opponent in a very powerful and slow motion force. Ooh, that's brutal. And yeah, speaking of slow motion, Well, unfortunately, X-ray moves don't make a return in this game, well, unless you count it when you punch or uppercut somebody, and on occasion it shows their bones breaking at seemingly random times, but otherwise no. Instead, you get something very similar once the words Fatal Blow appear underneath your health meter most of the time when your opponent is beating the shit out of you because, well, that's what it's called, the Fatal Blow. Goes into slow motion and everything, but isn't quite the same as X-ray moves because you don't see their bones breaking. But all I know is, I'm pretty sure if my throat was slit and all this shit was happening to me, I don't think I'd be able to get up and keep fighting. But nevertheless, it's still pretty awesome though. And the blood, it's all there. 60 frames per second isn't necessarily bad for a Nintendo hybrid console, I will say. And the fatalities, they're all there. My favorites, just to name a few, are probably Brona Baraka's, where he rips the face off and eats the brain out. Yummy. What is he, a zombie all of a sudden? Both of Johnny Cage's fatalities are pretty funny, I will say. Like one where he's trying to do a movie and he keeps screwing up the line and having to do a reshoot. And then the other one where he rips the torso off and uses it as a freaking ventriloquist dummy. That's just hilarious. I also do like Scorpions with the fiery chain. Hell yeah. And Sub-Zeros are pretty cool too. Yeah. Of course one of them has to involve a spine rip. But one thing I will note about them, even though they are bloody, the slow motion just makes it look a little bit cartoony, and, well, being that this is on Nintendo Switch, as I said, I'll cut it the benefit of the doubt. I'm sure it looks a lot better on Xbox One and PS4 for sure, being that, as I said before, they're graphically superior. You also get brutalities making a return from Mortal Kombat X, and just like that game, most of them require specific instructions which you'll see on the pause menu under the fatalities list. The easiest one to master that I'm sure most of you will probably do is when you uppercut them, it takes their head right off. But there's other ones that require specific instructions, a certain move, and so forth. Yeah, you gotta read it and know how to do it right. You unlock more of them for each character in the crypt, which I'll get to in a little bit. But yeah, basically, you have to wait till your character's down to just a little teeny bit of health. You can't wait till it says finish them. You'll probably know that if you played the previous game. So I don't think I have to say much more there. Unfortunately though, that's all you got. No faction kills, unfortunately, because there are no factions in this game. But there is Mercy. Yeah, that's right. If you press a certain button combination correctly, you can give your opponent his or her health back and let them keep fighting. Who the hell wants to do that? When I beat my opponent, I want to finish them, and I want to finish them for good. Another thing I do have to note about the fatalities is, just like the previous games, one is there on the plus menu screen. The other one, well, you have to unlock it. How? Well, look it up online and perform it while you're connected to the internet. Yeah, this is one of the many flaws I definitely have to address in this game. I can expect online multiplayer to require this, being that, you're playing online. And yeah, sometimes it works, then other times it lags, which completely sucks, and throws everything off and ruins the fun and experience. But, what did you really expect? Most of the other Mortal Kombat games in the past had the same problem with online, so I'm not surprised here. But otherwise, just like the past installments, you have many different ways of playing online. Join a room, play with friends, or you can challenge any random stranger, whether you accept or decline the challenge. You got tournaments, you got all this cool stuff, which is pretty good. You can fight as dirty as you want to, but again, if you pause the game, it doesn't really pause if you're trying to do a finishing move. You gotta know how to do it right off the bat, so best to keep the computer screen or a printed out sheet with all the fatality moves right in front of you, depending on which character you chose. And I can also expect Towers of Time to require this. Yep, they also make a return as well. They always change, and of course you get consumables that you can use against opponents. May seem cheap, but hey, if your computer opponent's using it, why can't you use it? I mean, it's only fair, right? If they fight dirty, you have just as much right to fight dirty as well. But the last fighter you face in this is not the same one as in the classic Towers. No, it's always somebody different. And that's the beauty of these. They're always different. So yeah, I could expect those things to require online, but then there's things that really shouldn't require internet connection. like unlocking the fatalities as I mentioned before. Seriously? If you play through the story mode, which I will say is pretty lengthy and the cutscenes are pretty cool, I showed you a little glimpse of it with the story of what happens to Shinnok, and, well, introduces the game's main villain, which is the last boss in the classic tower mode, as I showed before, but it's nothing too fresh or original. Watch cutscene, which most of the time you could skip at a certain point, fight your opponent, watch more cutscenes, fight your opponent. There's no split-second decisions in cutscenes like in Mortal Kombat X, but only on occasion when you have to choose between one of the two players to take down your opponent. So sadly, yep, that too takes a bit of a step backwards. But the characters actually have a pretty good backstory. Johnny Cage actually is a lot cooler. I wasn't much of a fan of his character, but I'm glad to say, thanks to this game, they actually made him look a lot more cooler and a lot more badass, and of course, funny, as I mentioned before, with his fatalities. The story mode isn't bad, but if you play it all the way through when you're not connected to internet, like if you're on the road or something, then you're not going to get the stuff unlocked. Yeah, you could save and load your story mode back up, which one of them is 2 fighting arenas, and eventually you get the character Frost unlocked, which is pretty cool, I will say. Her fatalities ain't bad. But you also need internet connection for accessing the crypt. Talk about bullshit. I played Mortal Kombat Deception on PSP, on the go, accessed the crypt with no internet. I did everything on there, with the exception of online multiplayer. Seriously, I don't understand why this game has to require it. It makes no sense. And the crypt is huge, don't get me wrong. I mean, it's like an adventure within itself. It's like Mortal Kombat X again. There's a lot to explore, a lot to unlock. It's bigger than you expect, that's for sure. And it's, as I said, to unlock brutalities and lots of other stuff that'll come in use. But to require online internet, it just strips the game of its fun right here if you want to play it on the go. I mean, I can understand if you're home and playing it on Xbox One or PS4, that's fine. But come on, I like to be able to play this on the go. I mean, geez, you think that's enough? You also need it to rank not only your profile up, but also to rank each character up individually, which, okay, I will admit is kind of tedious. I could accept this in Injustice 2. You know, there's a lot of stuff you can unlock to power your characters up, but in this game, isn't quite as interesting. Yeah, you can customize them and everything, but I feel like it doesn't have quite the same feel to it as that game did. I mean, that gives it plenty of replayability, but in this game, it just feels tedious and unnecessary. But again, you need internet for it. I'm sounding like a broken record on that. But I can't stress how much bullshit that is right there. I mean, talk about ridiculously over-reliant on internet, if I do say so myself. I mean, you can't collect coins, you can't collect items, you can't rank them up or get them anything, or improve your characters. I mean, without internet, you're ill-equipped to deal with less of the features this game has to offer. So, yeah. Those are the complaints I have right there about the game. Aside from the fact that yes, it does take a bit of a step backwards, sadly there's no Tester Might, no Tester Sight or any of those cool bonus games. There's not as many characters. So would I say the game is bad? Not necessarily. As I mentioned in my top 10 best video games of 2019, I included this one, but rather at a low spot, and, well, obviously for a good reason right there, as you just heard. You do get the comic book character Spawn as a DLC character, which is actually the most recently released addition to the character roster. Not bad, I will say. And you probably saw you get the Terminator, which sadly isn't the one from the first 2 James Cameron classics. Unfortunately, it's the one from the newest one, Dark Fate. Though there's 2 different versions of him. Yeah, of course you get not 3, but 2 variations, unlike the previous game, which give sort of different moves with each character, and well, a 3rd if you chose to customize each character. As weird as the Terminator DLC is in this game, he actually is pretty cool. His moves are badass, he sounds like Arnold Schwarzenegger, and well, this is probably the best fatality right here. Yeah, you're terminated. You also get returning classic characters, like the long-haired screamer, Sindel, Shang Tsung, who sadly doesn't have the morph ability, but he can steal the soul of your opponent and imitate them for a brief moment. Yep, do their moves and everything. You also get the Juggernaut Shao Kahn, the Native American Nightwolf, and from the DC Universe, the Clown Prince of Crime himself, the Joker. Seriously? Is this Mortal Kombat or Mortal Kombat vs. DC Part 2? What is it with this weird crossover crap? I mean, seriously, you throw Mortal Kombat characters in Injustice, and now throwing DC comic characters in Mortal Kombat? I guess because it's made by the same studio and uses the same gameplay elements. Why not, right? I'll let it slide because he's got some pretty cool moves, some funny ones. And his fatality, well, this one's probably my favorite one here. That's just rich right there. So those are the DLC characters. A pretty decent selection. I should also add there's various modes of training as well, like playing a computer character that does nothing where you can up the difficulty a little bit, fatality training, and even learning different moves, which some of them are ridiculously long combo moves. Yeah, sorry guys, but this is reminding me a lot of doing those ridiculously long combo moves on Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance and Deception's Conquest mode. Hated that shit. But otherwise, plenty enough to keep you busy for a while. It may be a bit of a step backwards, and it may not be the best in the series, but hey, Mortal Kombat 3 wasn't as good as Mortal Kombat 2, but I still enjoyed it for what it was. And I can certainly do the same for this one as well. It may not be a worthy successor to the previous two entries in the series, but there are some plus sides to it that I mentioned before, like the story mode and crypt mode, despite the online requirements being a bit of a nuisance. And taking this on the go, well, has its drawbacks, but hey, you can still enjoy it for what it is. Graphics look good. With that 2.5D style graphics, it still looks pretty good for a Nintendo hybrid console, and I can't complain for Nintendo's capabilities. Again, may not be as good as PS4 or Xbox One's version, but it plays good, it sounds good, and if you can manage to play it somewhere where there's wireless internet, well, you'll have yourself a good time with this one. It's Mortal Kombat 11, and despite it not being a worthy successor to the previous two entries in this series, it still plays pretty good. So, my final verdict, Wii Remote Wii Motion Plus up and the playing Wii Remote up. It's not excellent, but, well, it's somewhat good bloody fun. So, till next time, keep watching.